Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi, we are here to talk about Baroque Flamenco in all its many guises, a piece that many harpists around the world have performed because you very kindly published it for us. But I'm very excited because you have given me permission to delve into your brain and computer, in fact, about this piece. And we're going to be using your Strings of Passion form to discuss this because it's a very powerful form. So that seems very perfect for talking about this wonderful, wonderful piece of music. So, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for this. And just to say to people, the Strings of Passion are seven principles that I kind of figured out that take me from creative expression, from creative impulse to creative expression. And I often also call them the principles of creative resonance. And it's a really great way to use, and they are impulse. We always have an impulse to do something. We then have a structure that when we're creating something, we have a structure. We want to have character, and you'll see how this plays out. There are roles that we discover. There is practice. There is deconstruction. Is this 7? And there is liftoff. All right. So we'll remember them more or less as we go.
And
so,
this almost came about because I was telling you that I wanted to work more on composition, in fact, and you were like, would you like to interview me about my pieces? And I was like, oh my God, yes. I feel like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, you know, got the golden ticket, so thank you. And I was saying to you, I want to know about the acorn first of all, and that's when we started going, oh, the Strings of Passion. Yeah, so let's start there. Let's literally go for it. Let's start with the impulse. So what was your first impulse to create, or where was Baroque Flamenco born? How did this come about?
Yeah, okay, it's really interesting because when I started the harp as an adult, and so I was 22 when I started. I'd had a couple lessons as a kid, but I started seriously then, and I needed to make a living, so I got a job. I had a long gown, so I got a job in a restaurant. But I only knew 4 songs.
Of the harpist.
Right. I only knew 4 songs. And I was playing, I really couldn't play that well. I had this little book called Medieval to Modern. And it had these
I've got that book on my shelf.
Yes, it's incredible. It's a great book. And it had this one song in it called, it was called Minuet in A minor by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And you know what? I can actually play it for you in a minute.
Amazing.
I could actually play it for you, but I'm going to put my harness on while I'm talking. And it was a very simple tune, and I realized, but it was like, 2 minutes long. And after I played my 4 tunes a couple times, a waiter walked up to me with a pitcher of water, and he said, if you play those 4 tunes one more time, I'm pouring this pitcher of water in your lap.
Wow. Okay.
Seriously. And I realized, okay, those are the only tunes I know.
I'll noticing
so I'm gonna have to expand these tunes. So shall I just play? Shall I just?
Yeah, we'd love to hear that because I'm sure some people watching this video don't know the theme.
So you could say, so there are several different impulses. There was, because this tune went through many different permutations. And I'm not sure if I can, whoops. Don't tell the harp I did that. That's made out of carbon fiber. I'm not saying to bang your harp around. Don't bang your harp around. But I'm in a closed space here. Blame it on COVID-19. So it was a very, very simple little tune, this Minuet in A minor. And it basically went, it had a, nope. Wow, that's a really cool.
That was a very nice chord.
I know, that was a great chord, but that wasn't it. Okay, where was that one? That I will make a new song on, but it went something like this. And then it repeated. So it was just this nice little ditty, this nice little tune. And then it had a contrasting section that went something like this. And it would do that, and then it would come back to the melody. Music like that. So I was like, well, I think I better extend some part of this. So I noticed that this was like...
I recognize the bass line there, yeah.
Yes, it's a descending bass line, A,
sure.
and G, and F, and E. So I was like, well, let's just keep going with A and G, A and G and F and E. And then I would, every time, I'd just go off and I'd improvise. And when I'd get lost, I'd come back, or if I thought maybe the patrons were thinking, does she know what she's doing? And then I'd come
yes,
back
I do. Here it is.
Yes, I do.
And this, by the way, anybody, is like the secret to filling time, if you ever need to, that you are revealing for us right now. I can't believe that Baroque Flamenco was born out of filling time.
Exactly.
Hey, this means that maybe I will compose great pieces from my filling time. This gives me hope, Deborah. Anyway, carry on, as you were, sorry.
Well, filling time and also wanting to fill it by improvising.
Sure,
because I was going to get bored otherwise.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Then I was like, oh, that goes A and G and F and E. So what if I went A and G and G? Ooh, that's twice as long. So I could do even more. What if I went A?
I'm thinking of another section in Baroque Flamenco right now.
Yeah. So I just realized that every time, and then it became like a game. So this was the home free, that melody, and then this was the time I was going out into a new place. And every time I played it, I would make them twice as long on each chord. And so that was great because it built my repertoire like that. And I realized also that I was basically recreating what was called a rondo form in music, but I didn't know that was what it's called. So I played that for years. I learned other repertoire, blah, 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 blah. And then I start wanting to have a repertoire that's more dramatic. And because so I started thinking, okay, these are contrasting sections. How could I make them contrast more? So I could do this as a classical. And then I could do this.
So this is where the flamenco was born then.
I could just increase, I could look at what is contrast, okay? Contrast is in volume, contrast is in rhythm, okay? Well, all right, so then I started exploring it and started realizing that it doesn't just have this, it has that descending bass line, but the chord that it ends on is the dominant chord.
The chord.
And I started messing around with that dominant chord and realized this is a little out of tune. It's been warm here. I started playing with that chord and hanging out on that chord before I came back to this.
Right,
and then I started thinking, wait a minute, how can I make that even more contrasty? How can I spend more time on that? And this happened one night. I was playing in Germany with my band, and I was cleaning up after a gig, and Nuevo Flamenco came on the.
Okay.
And I was exhausted. I was looking at the harp, and I was like, oh my God, it's just a big guitar. And like I just had this moment of like, oh.
So let's make it like one. Wow.
And so then I started, I started really exploring what it meant to have it as a flamenco instrument. And at that time I was playing the big concert harp.
Okay, so you had the soundboard as well.
I started exploring the soundboard as well. Yeah. That was the genesis of the piece as a solo piece and also with a band. When I first started writing for symphony orchestra, the first piece I wanted to write was Baroque Flamenco.
Was this because you wanted to explore the other instruments and the sound and the power that they could add to the depth, I guess, this, or no? You're like, no, Shelley, no.
I'd like to say that was true. I just wanted it to be bigger. I just wanted to see what it was like. And it just felt like the right thing to do, and it felt like that the orchestra would give me a class. It would add to that classicalness, and then it could also add to that flamenco.
Okay, yeah, right. Sorry, carry on. Do carry on.
Well, it was the first piece that I wrote for chamber ensemble, and then also for symphony orchestra.
So it exists in many guises, doesn't it? And does this take us into structure in a way? Now are we moving over into structure? Well,
that's what's really, so now you've seen the structure. And as I said before, structure, once you have a structure, you can expand, alter, and substitute.
Which is exactly, I mean, this piece, because you've shared this with me before, I've seen this piece in existence as a single page of music. I've seen it as a picture. I've seen it as the full orchestral score. I've seen it as chamber score now as well. And so, you know, absolutely what you're saying, you know, about expanding and contracting and changing everything. This piece is just a beautiful example, I think, of how that can be done with music.
Well, let's take a look at that. I may not be able to get to that drawing, but maybe I can. So let me share my screen with you.
I feel while you're playing that, because I remember very distinctly I did your first run of the Baroque Flamenco online course.
Okay, well I want to keep you up while you're saying that. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. And I remember you talking to everyone being like, I've made a picture, and then you were like, are they going to think, you know, I hope there might be something like, are they going to think this is a bit dumb, or like, are they going to want their money back? It's like, is this like, or should I be doing a picture? And we loved it, you know, I was there being the student at the time, and it was just like, wow, that, of course that's what the song looks like. And it was really very, very powerful to suddenly see it as a picture. But I just think it's fascinating.
I'm actually going to look for that picture while you're talking, because the night before the class, I was trying to, let me just see if I can find it. So we may have to pause this for just 1 minute. Are you okay pausing this for 1 minute?
Yeah, let's pause it.
All right. So I wanted to go look at what?
You found the picture. Here, let's do this.
I found the picture. Yeah. So I just want to say, so the night before I'm teaching this class, and I'm telling everybody, okay, I'm going to break it down for you. And the night before, I have this idea, like I want to show people how I see this. And so I'm like drawing and stuff like this, and I finally get the thing, and I hold it up and I look at it, and I just have this moment of utter shame. I'm like, I'm like, people are going to come into the class and they're going to be like, we're not in kindergarten. We came here to learn music. But it was like 3 in the morning or something like that. The class started. So this is, I'm going to open up my screen and show you. This is what I showed. This is what the students saw, as this is the piece you are going to learn. So this is the piece that they're going to learn. And so this is inside my academy, and then I explained it all. I made the video for it, but in fact, this is what I love about looking at it this way, is that when you look at it this way, it can become anything. Okay, we're jumping around in the strings of passion. So first is impulse. The second is you make a structure. Then you add character to it. And you saw me adding character as I was exploring it. Mm-hmm. Then you look at the roles. So I'll talk about that when we talk about
see the character visually as well straight away here, can't you? And I genuinely think somebody watching, you're watching this in a show that is not a musician, I would expect they would be able to follow this score as well,
Right. You would know exactly what you know. Absolutely. Exactly what's happening. And you would also know that we actually cut out part of it. We cut out two of the sections. But what's beautiful, this is actually the principle of deconstruction. And it's the 6th principle before liftoff. Because once you deconstruct it and you get it down to its simplest form, like this, it can become anything. And you don't have to stick to the way you were doing it. It can, it can transform into anything. So since this is the way that I see it in my brain, it was easy then to expand it to be a concerto rather than just a single, just something. I think it's
beautiful
myself.
That it exists like this, and it exists in like, I don't know how many millions of pages. It's an orchestral score.
Right. Let me see. I have to do a different kind of share. I have to come out of the share for a second. But yeah, so let's take a look at the orchestral score. I'm going to share my whole screen here. So
and how many instruments did you score? What kind of orchestra did you score this for?
Well, I originally scored it for the Boston Pops, and so that was an absolutely full symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
And so it was, well, let's take a look at it. So let's, so these are my notes.
This is incredible. This is Deborah's file of files on Baroque Flamenco. And
Right.
I think that this, even though I feel like, you know, I've studied stuff like this in my life and I've written stuff and organized for ensembles and things, this still blew my mind. I think this is mind blowing that there are so many files on your computer designated to this amazing piece, and it exists in so many different ways, and it's fascinating. So sorry, I've interrupted
Right.
you. Going
Yeah,
into
right. That's true. And this doesn't even include the whole, class that I made to
yeah,
teach
of
other
course.
harpists how to play this. But yeah, so just at this file level, so these are just the notes and materials.
Mm-hmm.
This is the actual score for orchestra. These are the harp parts. So the solo harp parts. These are the parts for the other instruments. So for example, you'll open it up for there's the parts for chamber ensemble, which is, you can just see. And I created a number system for myself since I have a really hard time being organized, where the flute is always number 1. The clarinet is always number 7. I don't think that's how most composers do it, but I have to do that because I have to have some solidity, or I will get completely confused. So you'll notice that when you open it up, like, I don't know which.
So I'm just
I
going
might
through
have
the
put
list. So yeah.
The rest of the parts with the newest version may be in a slightly different place. But you can see also here, this is still 1 and 2. This is flute 1 and 2.
Sure.
Flute 3, or piccolo, whatever. Anyway, so you can always see that number 7 is going to be the clarinet. And
you've
these
scored. Sorry to beg your pardon. You've scored this down, haven't you, as well? You've made a reduction of this for chamber.
Yeah. So originally it was for for full symphony orchestra. It still is playable. It still can be played with full symphony orchestra, but I discovered that many orchestras want to be able to play it with pairs, what's called pairs of winds and brass. So it can be played with just 2 flutes. It can be played with just 2 oboes, just 2 clarinets, just 2 bassoons, or the contrabassoon. Anyway, you can add the contrabassoon, and it could be done with just 2 horns, even though originally I wrote it for 4 horns. So those are the orchestra parts that get pulled out so that the orchestra players can play them. And then we needed to make a piano reduction. So that the pianist can practice it in performance, and can also perform it. So Tim is the pianist that worked with me. So we made a basic one, but then we made one that actually could be performable. It could be done on stage with piano and harp.
If for people who maybe don't know, that sometimes when you're rehearsing for a concerto, you will rehearse before you get the chance to go and play with an orchestra, because it's quite hard to go and rehearse with an orchestra infinitely. You get to rehearse with a pianist instead, don't you? And you do that, your little practice room on your own before you go. So yeah. But it's wonderful to know that exists then as something you can perform. Well, that's fantastic to know.
Yeah, and it's really great to have that. That wasn't available for a long time, and now it is.
And I believe. Sorry, I know, I'm just too excited about this. I need to stop interrupting you. I'm just really excited. There's even, I know, another 1-page in your workshops, isn't there? There's a 1-page sheet that you wrote for teaching this piece that when you do live workshops. So it's just phenomenal, really, to think of all these different.
That's right. And
I see concert band even there.
Right. I can try to find. I don't know if I can find. Let me see if I can find that. I meant to have that up. Let's just see if I can find a PDF with it. All right, so you can go searching there, computer. I also created audio files so that the harpists have something to play along with, so that they can practice it again, because you don't want to be sitting with an orchestra and that's the first time that you've heard the orchestra. I want them to be able to be as prepared as they possibly can. So yeah, it is kind of cool to go back here. So let's, this is, look, there's several J's. Because this is new scores. Interesting. All right. So
there's even information there about the licensing as
That's
well.
Right.
Isn't there?
That's right. So if people want to license it, I need to know who needs what, and I may have put them. So yeah, these are the different orchestras who were playing it, and so I sent them out a performer pack so that they had that to play with. But let's just take a look at the score just so you can see it, because we were comparing it to this. which is how it exists in my head. But to make something like that that exists in my head, to make it possible for other people to play it, we can look at any of the scores. Oh, is that just the readme? Okay, so this is the score. So this is just
when
the
you
PDF.
worked on this score, because obviously, you've told us that this began, you were in a restaurant and you were trying to make a piece longer, and then bam, you find yourself orchestrating. Now, how did you go into creating something like this from being the person who was playing an 8-bar piece and trying to make it 16 bars and trying to make it longer?
Let me get the book. Well, I think in another interview I mentioned that I think my greatest genius is being able to find the things that can help me.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I found this book.
I know this book.
Orchestration.
Yeah.
And I put, dividers in it.
Wow.
So,
okay, yeah.
I mean, but I didn't just do that. I mean, when I was recording this, let me just show people so they can compare the, again.
Yeah, sorry, I've knocked you off on a tangent. I beg your
Oh,
pardon.
no, it's fine. That's one of the things I love about our conversations, is that they always do this. Is that the right place I want to go to? That's not going. Okay,
that front page of the school.
Just have to remember. We'll have to remember what that drawing looked like.
Mm-hmm.
This is an overview that's similar to that. Like if you compared this to that, or if we put it in colors, you would see the Baroque. Let me just pull up an annotation here for a sec.
So that flamenco introduction is the I remember, if I remember correctly, the red spiky bit, isn't it?
The red spiky thing, yes.
Yeah.
So you can. Hey, where's my? Oh, I was supposed to have an arrow here. Let me get my arrow again.
And then we had the minuet, was the little blue oval, and then the variation of flamenco.
That's right. So every time you see every time you see minuet, that was a little blue oval, and then every time you see flamenco variation, which now beach balling, that was where the spiky thing was.
Oh yeah.
And then here's the flamenco harp cadenza, which was the big spiky thing.
Big spike, yeah.
That's right. And so
if anyone doesn't know the piece of music, you would totally guess where that was in performance.
That's right. So of course you can't give that to a symphony orchestra. You can't be like, well, just take this picture and you play this and you play that. So what you have to do for symphony orchestra is you have to write it all out. You have to. This is just the introduction where just the harp is playing.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where everybody's playing. Dolce, the Baroque theme. Oh, let me get my thing.
Even I think scores look beautiful. I think that looks beautiful, just written like that.
They are beautiful, and you can see. I may be able to play the harp, but I do not seem to be able to play Zoom. So you can see the melody, and you can see the bass line. And this is where we get into rolls, which is the fourth string in the strings of passion. Mm-hmm. When you want, you've got impulse, you've got structure, and you've got character. Those are all things that you can express yourself, even without musical skill. Mm-hmm. You can have a structure, you can express character. But when you want to play with others, you have to start differentiating the roles. Mm-hmm. And in music, the roles are melody, bass, and accompaniment. And so you can see here, all of these instruments are playing melody, even if they're in harmony with each other. And these instruments, these bass instruments, are playing the bass role. Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Do this, and you can actually see that at this moment, the harp is the one who's playing the accompaniment.
Accompanying, yeah.
So you've got the melody, you've got some inner voices here that are playing a little bit of accompaniment, but other ones you can see, they may be too small for people to see, but you can, even if you know nothing about music, you can see the characteristics. If I can get
even the slurs that are written over the melodic line make it look more joined together, and if we think of them, the human voice often holding the melody line, I think it looks more like a human voice singing, doesn't it, on the score? So
it does, yeah. I'm just trying to pull it over. Boy, am I having trouble with this. So yeah, you can, can I screw it down? Whoops. So even without knowing anything about music, you can see a whole bunch of things right here. You can see that this rehearsal letter helps us see where we are. Everybody needs to regroup. This is a map of music. These are, like the road signs. This is the big road sign. This is like the mile markers here of a map. And then you can see that this is there's just a lot more notes there. There's a lot more movement there. And you can see that this bass line is really punctuating the beginning of every measure. And this bass line is, you know, rhythmically, you know, playing in between these. These are whole notes that are holding the middle of the piece. So knowing nothing about music, you still can see that you still can get a sense of who's doing what. And so that's why it's really great to look at this. Anyway, so this is the full score. This is just this gives absolutely every instrument their part. And then the conductor is looking at this whole thing. So really each person knows what to play.
Sure.
And I think I just wanted to see if there was anything else that I wanted to show people. The last thing that I wanted to show them, this is a chamber ensemble version. This is a band version. You know, so there's just different versions of it. This was when I first wrote it for pairs of instruments. That was the first time I did it. And then this is the solo sheet music that I made for harpists so that they could play it solo. Yeah. And then there's probably, it's not even up here, but there's also a version for harp ensemble. So there's so many different ways to take one piece of music and play it in many different permutations. And let's just go back here and see if the very last thing that you asked about, which was that picture of, well, oh yeah, okay, so let's look at this chart here. Nope. Well, that's not as charty as you want to see. But this again actually shows you one of my very first versions of it. You can actually see that bass line that we were just looking at.
Yeah, you can, can't you? Just drawn out on the harp, left hand part.
Yeah, that's right. We can see that here. And we can also see that it goes from flamenco to Baroque and flamenco to Baroque. So
I love how you use different text even.
Right, right. I always wanted to try to create the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm playing with people, so this was a chart to use with a band, and I just wanted to, I wanted to say as little as possible so that they could just feel and see what we had to do. Let me see. If I
remember seeing you do, well, I took part in a workshop that you did of this, in fact, using the one sheet of the teach people, and it was really fun because you showed everyone like the character of the piece, and you got everyone to stand up.
Oh, that's right.
Clap the rhythms, move the rhythms, and then try and move in a different way when they were feeling like the Baroque. And then I think you even this is it. And the teeny mice, you had everyone being teeny mice to be because the Baroque theme Deborah takes through being kind of in a middle voice register, and then she takes it up to being much higher, an octave higher, in fact. And so you had everyone being little mice, and I just remember watching like pennies drop all around the room. I think it was one of those, it was an American harp event, and there was like loads of harpists there. We don't get them that big in the UK, and so I was fascinated watching as well. But yeah, it was amazing. But that one sheet, I'm sorry, I just talked over and it's
I'm gonna pull it up again. But it's funny when you describe it, because I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I really I'm like into kindergarten. And but I do think it's so important to get out of the complexity. When you see it with a symphony, it's complex. But when I talk to the symphony orchestra, I say to them, my influences were Debussy, Mahler, Prokofiev, and Looney Tunes.
Right, wow.
And so that you have to understand that you're not just playing music, but you're playing a character.
Yeah.
So that it becomes alive, and it's a stage of like this jungle, or this wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I do want, I want to get out of my complexity and because music is about playing.
Mm-hmm. You talked so much about seeing when you're performing the emotions, the emotional environment that you create for people to experience is so powerful. Right. And I think it's very easy when you have written something down and passed it on to someone and they've never met you or heard it performed, and they've gone, oh, I've got this piece called Baroque Flamenco, perhaps. Of course they've heard of you, but you know what I mean? They've got it in front of them and they're going to play it. Yeah. And to lift that off and understand the character, I think is so powerful in your music, maybe in everyone's music, but it's so powerful that I just feel that when watching you do that workshop totally epitomized that for me, watching you drawing the character out of the people. It's like this, that, you know, impulse, structure, character, the fact that, you know, and you often say to me, people don't, you know, you don't need to have loads of technical ability to be able to do those three things, and people can be able to express their character hugely, even if their technical ability isn't so far down the line even. And this is exactly what that one sheet that you're going to show us in a moment, I'll stop talking,
right. Yeah,
and it shows, it enables people to do, enables people without loads of technique or loads and loads of everything to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I love teaching is finding how can we really live within our technical ability? Because I think it's only when we're pushing out of our technical ability that we are stumbling. But actually the resourcefulness is to say, what can I do with the technique that I have now? Mm-hmm. And that actually answers the question you asked in the beginning, which is, you know, the genesis of this. Mm-hmm. I saw the harp and I was playing the harp and I loved it. I loved the mechanics of it, but there was something I couldn't express with it. And there was something that I needed to express as a woman. Mm-hmm. I needed to be able to express the passion of the woman. I needed to express what I saw in flamenco dancers, but I wasn't going to learn how to flamenco dance. I wanted to get all the spirit, all the spirit of the flamenco dancer and put it into the skills that I had and into the care. I just wanted to have that in my body, and I wanted the harp to be able to be, you know, loud, and not just loud, but passionate as well as delicate, to have a span of expression that is the human span of expression, not a span of expression limited by what we think an instrument can do.
So often people feel that the harp is this, like, you know, is always beautiful, and of course it is, but truly through your music, you know, the harp can be anything. It's just a voice, which we've talked about in another video.
That's right. That's right. It is a voice. It is a voice longing to be free, to be expressive, as we all are. So, okay, so now I'll take you backstage.
Sure, yeah. I'm trying not to share a personal story now.
Oh, so no, share it. Share it.
Well, it just made me think of my dad saying, I remember when my dad was right at the end of his days, and I just played for him and a group of friends, and a lady said, "Oh, I'm sorry I missed it. The harp is so relaxing." And my dad, who'd always been there with that comment, it was the first time he'd really seen me play when I'd sort of come out and found my own character, thanks to you, really. And he went, "It's not just relaxing, you know, it can be many different things." And it was just like, to hear my dad say this, and really it was probably Baroque Flamenco that broke him, because I definitely did that as the final piece in that particular concert. And it does, you know, you see many audiences kind of go, oh, the harp isn't just relaxing, you know.
Right. Well, you're right. And that was another thing. And many people who play it use it as the final song, as do I when I'm playing concert harp. Well, even now I can play it on the lever harp as well, because people need to get there. If I do play, even if I play it, so they need to start. They need to start where they understand the harp, and then get to the point that Baroque Flamenco takes them. So when I'm only playing Baroque Flamenco, I will play a lot of arpeggios before I start to get the audience familiar. Wow. Like, okay, I know the harp. I know. Okay, got the harp. Oh no, is that a harp too? It helps them make that connection. So let's go look at this drawing just so we can see once again what you were talking about, Shelley. I think I can just pull up that one drawing, which is, here are the pieces again. And you can see the introduction, and you can see the Baroque theme in the middle. I'm not going to get out the little arrow because I always fight with that arrow. And you can see the improv section. Again, okay, I'm going to get that arrow out. You do like that arrow. You can see that bass line again. There it is. There it is. And it's even kind of, well, no, it's not up there. But you can see it down here. And then even if you know nothing about music, you can look at this and you can see this is percussive. It just looks percussive. This is the percussive middle section. And then this is the ending. which is very dramatic. I'll bring it out.
Again, if you know nothing about music, there's a little tiny little thing that looks like a moon, and actually it's a nail, isn't it? And I love that. That's because it's like, oh yeah, of course that's a nail. Of course it is.
Right. Yes. Right. A fingernail. So so this is what I made for workshops, so that we could simplify it down to its most simple musical elements, so that I could teach it in an hour, and then people would be able to play enough of it that they could get the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Because once you understand the arc of the piece, then you can start filling it in. And that was my experience. Actually, I can't get to that harp. I'm gonna whack it. But one of the things that I realized, I can just do it on this harp. I was trying to figure out an end to the piece that would sound like this is totally out of tune and is missing strings, but I'll show you. It doesn't matter. I wanted it to be something like the pianists. They go dum dum dum, and I was like, how can I do that? You know, I can't. No, I can't do it that fast. And then one day I just pulled the harp and I was like, oh, I could do this. Now, I mean, like, this is really out of tune because I haven't played it for a while. The point was, you play and then I mean, like, that was that's right. That created the dramatic thing. And it's so funny because sometimes I'll see people play it and they'll be trying to do it, you know, in an articulated way, and I'll be like, it's a gesture. It's a gesture of freedom. Now
we get so tied up as harpists, so we've been taught, and your glissando begins from the top G, and then you go glide down and you bring your finger and then you look at your music, you're like, and then everybody, you're teaching to students, and they're like, so where do I begin? Where do I end? It's like, okay, so just take all that away and then think, back into the character. And if you think of the spiky red thing, I think that shows you again. That's how, visually, straight away.
And what you said before about going through emotions, that is really so music needs to represent life. And so and life goes through emotions, and trying to figure out how to do that with the music that I have. That's why. I mean, it's not like, well, it's these notes and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. It's how can you create that experience for the audience. And now I'm going to tell a story about you, Shelley. So when you came to first work,
which one?
It's the Beethoven story. So you came, all right. So you came and you were creating your first show, or it may have been your second show, and you said, "So I want to create this experience." Wait a minute, I got to put my harp on for this.
I was like, I want to be the whole orchestra, but I'm just a harpist.
That's right. Well, and people are probably going to hear me whacking the harp here, but and you said, I want this experience. I want to give this to the audience. Yeah. This moment in Beethoven where it's come out of a storm, and then you hear this beautiful pan flute. But the show's in 2 weeks, and I don't know how I'm going to do that. How I'm going to learn to play that Beethoven piece. Blah 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 blah. And I think
I've got the score, and I'm trying to reduce it onto the harp. I remember this.
Right. And I think I said so you're trying to create the effect of this storm going into this beautiful pan pipe flute thing, right? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, so is there a reason you just don't go?
Which is exactly what happens, and it's recorded on a CD now. So it's like, literally, I ended up doing like loads of extended techniques, and talking about those units of emotion. It's exactly what it did. Is it pulled out that threatening, that fear, that kind of that noise, that anxiety or whatever, and then took it straight into the kind of the release and the joy and the happiness, and yeah. So
right, and that's the point. It's the human experience. So Beethoven did it his way, and that's the beauty of deconstruction, and that is why deconstruction is the principle right before. I'm sorry, I just made that up at this moment, because you can put them in any order. But now I'm like, and this is why I cleverly put this in this place. It's right before liftoff, because it is that deconstruction of like, well, wait a minute. The experience you want to have is this, right? Okay, how do you use what you have now to create that experience? deeply believe that every one of us can create those experiences for ourselves. We can create peak musical experiences for ourselves and others at any level of technical ability. If, and this is the huge if, because this is where, if you can open your mind enough to actually use those resources in a totally creative, resourceful way. So
I've seen you brilliantly help people do this, though, of all levels in the academy. I mean, it's totally possible. I've seen people who have, like, you know, only maybe had 10 lessons be able to do this, and then you know, maybe somebody else who's had many more find it not so easy to open up. So these are conversations we've had a lot. I know.
That's right. You have to deconstruct your, if you have a lot of chops, you have to deconstruct them in order. And here's a perfect example. One of the people I worked and coached with, and people will see this in Invention and Alchemy in a different tune in 996. For years, he tried to get me, and I don't know what you feel, so you'll see it. He tried to get me to do this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm not doing that. He's not playing the harp. Like,
and then in Invention and Alchemy, you're doing that with amazing,
because it took
beautiful
50 years to get over myself.
Yeah.
And be like, no, it's not all about how much technique I have. It doesn't matter. It's about what effect, what experience can I create?
Yeah. And that's actually something that's phenomenal about Invention and Alchemy, that as a whole, is the variety that you see you go through on stage, and from watching you be totally virtuistic to watching you like stand there with dustbin lids, and you are just as engaging with either of those things. And talking about what we just talked about, it's because of the emotional contrasts so many times, isn't it? A lot of it is because, you know, you're getting these huge different emotions that wind through the show, and they are very powerful, and they are it's a huge emotional journey that you take everyone on.
That's true. Yeah.
Which Baroque Flamenco does on its own as well, coming back to the piece we're actually looking at.
Well,
have we been
Shelley, you're right, that each piece has an arc, an emotional arc, and then the whole show, and when we build, and you know, when we work together to build your show, we did the same thing. Each arc in each piece and the overall arc. So that and I think the point of this is, I mean, my job is to be an ambassador to the world of music and imagination. I need to be a doorway. And so we need to, now I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, darn. That we need, how are we, oh, I know what I was going to say. When we are on stage, we are playing for people. To me, that means they would be doing it. We need to do for them what they would do if they had that skill. They would be up there doing it. So we need to do it in a way that allows them to feel they are doing it, because that lifts them from consciousness for a moment, allows them to be something different, and then they come back into their own consciousness and they're changed. You've let them have an experience they didn't have before. And you do that by embodying, so that they can, if we embody it enough, they will get out of their body for a moment and into ours. We lift them from that burden, and then they'll go in, but they will be changed. Yeah.
You know, I'm really listening to you saying this and thinking that every live performance I've seen you do, well, and recorded, every performance I've seen you do, you know, that is something that you can literally watch happening to the audience. Is the phrase that my mom uses, is like being taken out of yourself, isn't it? It's like the fact that, you know, that you allow people in enough. It's not like, here I am playing lots of fancy stuff and there are you watching me and being impressed by me. It's totally like this conjoined, you become, back to the prosthetic again, but like you become one with the audience as well, I think, in your shows.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. It's like being a colonial animal, like those animals.
Hive mind. Hive mind.
Yes, it is. It's a hive, it's creative hive mind.
And Deborah is the queen bee.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's what I want. When I go to a performance,
Yeah.
I want to lose myself.
Mm-hmm.
And find myself, to lose myself, to find myself by losing myself in what the performer is doing. I long for them to show off or take me in. I'm longing for that. And what's fascinating is I've seen that in performers of any technical level.
Yeah.
And often people will lose it as they get fascinated by their technique.
Wow.
And then we have to break down. I did.
Yeah.
Like, look how much I can play.
Well, I know for sure we've talked about, doing workshops and the fact that quite often it's the people without so many technical skills or without just with having not done much on their instrument that will take you slightly more far out ideas for the harp and be able to run with them better, because it's almost like you haven't got a load of stuff blocking you. You haven't put up a load of blocks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons I'm committed that there are players of every level in all my classes.
Yeah.
Because the players who are not ingrained are the ones who will help the players who are ingrained to open their minds. And the players who have more skill can teach some of those skills, but it's really the ones who are not skilled who can open the minds of the ones who have the skills.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we've been through this. We've been through impulse. We've been through structure. We've been through character. We've been through roles. Yes, we have. We've been through practice. We've been through practice.
Okay, let me just quickly say practice.
Yeah.
There are two parts of practice.
Mm-hmm.
You practice to get something.
Yep.
And then you create a practice so that it can get to you.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like that happened for me with Baroque Flamenco.
Mm-hmm.
Because of my financial situation, meaning I had to make money with the harp from the very beginning. And so I had to play this tune every night, once or twice a night, over and over and over again. I had to teach it to other people because they were playing with me. I had the gift of necessity.
Oh, yes, yes.
that I played it over and over so that it could get to me and so that it could expand over time.
I can't help, the teacher in me just wants to say, if there are any students watching this is like what we were thinking about, like embodying something and being able to know something so you can literally do something else at the same time as playing the thing. What better way than being trying to fill a 3-hour set it's just like the perfect way of loop practicing.
It's great, and I still have to do it today. I'm not playing in a restaurant, but to actually put myself into that zone of practice.
Yeah.
So that is string number 5.
Yeah.
And then there's
deconstruction.
We talked about,
and liftoff.
Liftoff is what people will see when they watch Invention and Alchemy. Liftoff is the moment when you stop trying to change or perfect or look, or you come to the music exactly as you are, with trust that you have gotten whatever you need to get, and then you bring yourself to it fully. You let go of everything that you can't do. You fully let go of everything that you can't do, and you bring yourself fully to what you can do, and you move forward with it.
Mm-hmm. And that is so powerful. I mean, you've talked to me a lot about that, and being able to do that is just, that's when I know that I am performing at my best, if I can get into what you've just said.
That's right. And I noticed that for myself and others, there, as you prepare for a performance, you're practicing and you're practicing and you're practicing, and then I never am able to actually do everything I intended to do. There's things in Invention and Alchemy I never got onto the page, and for this day, I wish there were horns in this one piece, but they never got in. But you come to that moment that is an hour before the show or a day before the show, and you're like, no, there's no more time to practice. No, there's no more time to get this. So this is the moment when you bring yourself fully, when you it's that letting go, when you surrender to who you actually are in this moment, and then have the trust to bring that open and open that up on the stage. And so much can happen in that last moment, hour, whatever. And I'm just thinking, I remember my first concerto that I played, it was Ravel, and I was messing up the whole thing. I mean, I hadn't played that long, and I was messing it the whole thing up. And I remember it was coming to the end, and I was like, I've screwed this thing up. I said, but you know what? I know the last note of this piece, and I know that note like nobody's business, and I am going to give this audience the greatest last note of this piece they have ever gotten.
Brilliant.
And that is liftoff, when you just let that be.
It's beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you for letting me explore and hopefully not take over in my excitement too much about this amazing piece that is Baroque Flamenco, that exists for everyone in every way, really. I mean, and when you see this in Invention Alchemy, it is powerful. It is full of tender moments, power, and the thought that this was born in a restaurant when you knew 4 pieces is wonderful. And the fact that I know we've not talked about this, that you talk about when the cadenza comes. I've heard you say, like, I want that's when the soloist enters the room, and it's like you have to, when you teach it to people, I've heard you sort of say, make it you, and we see you come on, as the
and it's funny,
the dancer at that moment.
Be the dancer and be the hero in that moment, because so in my story, the older woman, the mature woman, is the one who comes in, and at that moment just is like, let me show you guys how it's done. And I was talking to a harpist who's in I think her 20s or 30s or something like that, and she's playing Baroque Flamenco, and I said, so, that's the story there, and she was like, oh no, that's not the story there. She said, no, that's the moment when the younger woman who comes in, and when she shows. And I realized that's right. That is when the person you are comes on. Whatever that is. Really you. Come on stage and you embody that. And that was the point of the piece for me. Is to be able to embody that spirit and bring that alive.
It's a very unusual experience that I have, and I think I share this with other harpists playing it, because like no other piece, you get into that moment and it's like something takes you over. I can't even really explain it, and I'm assuming that's why from an audience perspective it is so fascinating to watch. But it's like, this other, I can't explain it. I feel like it's almost like an out of body experience, if you like in that moment. So it's really interesting, anyway, we've now digressed away. I was trying to wrap this up for us.
As we do,
it's a beauty. This is our convoluted ways that we go around things. But
let's call it a coda.
This is our coda. We just wanted to revisit one more time before we send you on your way. But watching this in Invention Alchemy or in any performance of Deborah's is just like an experience not to be forgotten and not to be missed. So,
and Shelley, I just want to thank you for asking me these questions, because I feel like you're representing, you're representing you, but you're also representing people who don't necessarily have the opportunity to ask, like, well, what was this like, and let's look at that. And so I just really, it's always fun to talk to you. I mean, I love it, and I love our conversations, and I love, just thank you for helping me take this apart.
Thank you for the golden ticket. Take care.